Okay, so Fareed, I mean, really, honestly, this is really quite an opportunity for me. I'm so happy to be able to introduce you to the African Film Festival that's virtual this year.
Yeah.
This is the African Film Festival for 2021, and we are, live in February. And the your film embodies what we do at the African Film Festival, and it's very important. It's very important to me personally in terms of my own work. So I am glad that we have this opportunity to bring you here live with us virtually from Tunis or from Paris.
Yeah, no, now I'm in Paris for
Okay, okay,
medical reasons, but I live in Tunisia.
good.
Maybe you
And
should tell the audience that Tunisia is located is North Africa, because the name Tunisia. When I came to the state, I said Tunisia. I said, "Oh, you mean Indonesia?" I said, "No, no, Tunisia is in North Africa. It's not in Asia."
exactly. So first of all, we'll start by let me do a brief bio for you because it's so impressive, and I think it will kind of give a context for how this work came to be and who's behind it. So you're born in Tunis, which is in North Africa. It borders Algeria, a country that I'm interested in. It's on the Mediterranean. And so Férid Boughedir started his career as one of the most respected film critics in Africa and the Arab world. He's written many articles and books on the history of African cinema, as well as North African and Middle Eastern cinema. He's also directed two full-length documentaries, the one that we're doing today, which is Caméra d'Afrique, and also Caméra d'Arabe. Both of them have been presented at Cannes. In terms of his educational background, Farid completed two PhD theses on Arab and African cinemas at the Sorbonne in Paris, and he is currently a professor of cinema at Tunis University in Tunisia. Uh, Hafouin, his critically acclaimed first feature, is really wonderful, was a box office success internationally, gotten numerous awards in Europe, USA, throughout Arab world, including the Carthage Film Festival's Golden Tani and the Best Arab Film Award at the Cairo International Festival in 1990. In 2013, Hafouin was selected at the Abu Dhabi Film Festival as among the best features of Arab cinema. And it remains today a number one box office film in Tunisia ever. His recent film, Zizo and the Arab Spring, was awarded Best Arab Film at the Cairo International Festival in 2016. His second feature, uh, Undeterred à la Goulet, was selected in official competition at the Berlin Film Festival, awarded the best film at the Biennale des Cinémas Arabes, organized by the Arab World Institute in Paris, and best film of North Africa at the 1996 Mnet All Africa Film Awards in Johannesburg, South Africa. Ferid was a member of the official jury at Cannes in 1991 and again in 2009, and a juror at Berlin Film Festival in 1997, at the Venice Film Festival in 1999, and at the Cairo International Film Festival in 1999. In 2001, he was president of the jury of FESPACO, which is in Ouagadougou, and president of the jury International Arab Film Festival of Oran in Algeria in 2017. He served as vice president and a main organizer of the Pan-African and Pan-Arab Carthage Film Festival and became the director of the festival in 2006. And he also found time to establish the Pan-African and Audiovisual Support Fund, FPCA. In 2013, Boughedir was awarded the important French Légion d'honneur medal at Cannes Film Festival. The same year, the Middle East magazine included Ferid as its annual list of the 50 most influential people in the Arab world. And last year,
I paid them a lot.
Yeah, well, they paid off. They paid off. And so last year, his
For me.
Camera d'Afrique was remastered in high def and selected for the Cannes Classics 2019. So again, we're in there's high esteem in terms of this guest, and I'd like for you, Ferid, just to tell us in general about this particular film and the impetus for it.
Yes, Rico. In fact, I must start from my how do you say training came from what we call the Cine Club, Cinema Houses Club, which is basically a French movement who was very successful after the World War II and defending the cinema as an art. I mean, defending the author films against the what we call escaping entertainment films. So I was raised in this idea to defend the cinema as an art and a mean of expression, not a way to escape reality by seeing Elizabeth Taylor or believing that you were elsewhere. But the real shock I was defending, the great world author like Bergman in Sweden or Buñuel in Spain or these were the masters for me. But I couldn't even imagine that from our continent could
Yeah,
emerge the
yeah.
equivalent of these masters. I had the inferiority complex, and the real salvation and the real shock came in 1966 after I started making short films in Tunisia. And it was the first session of Carthage Film Festival was devoted to African and Arab films. And it was very courageous because at that time there was only one feature from sub-Saharan Africa, which was Black Girl by Sam Ben Ousmane
Yes,
from Senegal, and it won the first prize.
yeah.
But by seeing this film, all my conception of cinema was completely overturned.
Yeah,
uh, I said, God, so we may do it too. We
yeah,
may in
yeah,
Africa, we may do it, and made it in a different and a very new way of telling thing through cinema. So at the same time, it was the content and the form. Both were very new and very courageous and very tough. So from that time, my inferiority complex disappeared.
yes,
I
yes.
said, so we can do it in Africa.
Mhm.
And after that, I went to all the sessions of the Pan-African Film Festival of Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso as a film critic, as you mentioned. There was a film critic of Jeune Afrique, which is a
Yes,
weekly newspaper, but the most widely spread in French-speaking Africa and Francophone Africa. And thanks to this job, I went to all the sessions of Ouagadougou, and of course, all the session of Carthage, because it's my country, Carthage. So it was the odd year, it was Ouagadougou, and the fair year, Carthage. The idea was to cross the Sahara thanks to cinema. So having filmmakers meet 1 year in North Africa, in what they call Arab culture dominant region, and the other year, the odd year, under the Sahara, in what we call Black Africa. And it was a bridge between African culture, which was impossible because of the desert of Sahara before. So
yes,
cinema helped us to make a bridge.
yes.
And the other turning point for me, which started the idea of making Caméra d'Afrique, was in FESPACO, in Pan-African Film Festival of Ouagadougou in 1973. The festival started being competitive 1 year before in 1972. And at that time, there was the winner was Umaru Ganda from Niger, who was formerly an actor in Jean Rouch film,
Yeah,
Moi un Noir, a black man. And he became a director himself. But there was no local film in Burkina Faso. There was not even TV. So in 73, second shock. The second shock is
yeah,
in Pespaco, they were presenting the very first feature film of Burkina Faso called Blood of the Pariahs. Pariahs, you know, it is the subcaste system. You know, if you belong to a subcaste, you cannot marry with another caste, and you know the injustice of tradition, in fact.
yeah, yeah,
Which
exactly. Yeah,
and this film was the first film ever made speaking the local language, which is in majority in Burkina Faso the More. So at that time there was no roof in the theaters. So we had to wait
nice.
until sundown to be able to see films.
Yes,
And during the day we were all, you know, all together in the festival talking about the future of African cinema, the struggle, the fight. And uh, for me it was very important because I was not a foreign observer. I was myself a filmmaker, and there was a real brotherhood between all the regions of Africa represented there, and a huge hope of how to liberate the screens, which were completely dominated by Western films, and put our films on these screens. And so we waited because it was the first time we were going to see a film, a Burkinabe film. And then it was something I never experienced again in my life, because when it became dark and they start the film,
yeah,
for the first time in history, we heard the More language on the screen. And the screen was reserved until then to the Western language, especially French, because even the American films were translated in French.
yeah,
And then I'll never forget the incredible reaction of the audience.
yeah,
Joy, happiness,
yeah,
you know, pride,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. Of
unique
course.
vibration, a unique
Yeah,
vibration
of course.
who
Yeah,
completely filled the
yeah,
theater.
of
And
course.
I really felt, you know, Rico, that maybe there was some gods at that time,
Yeah,
were good-willing gods, you know,
yeah,
were blessing this,
yeah,
this screening.
yeah,
And really, I felt in my flesh the vital necessity of African cinema at that time. I felt how much it was vital for African people not to be always passive consumers
yeah,
of other images. How important it was to hear your own language, to see yourself on the screen, to have a mirror, but not a mirror, you know, a banal
yeah,
mirror. No, a mirror through the point of view of an artist, which is very important. It's not only a photocopy of reality.
right,
It was a
exactly.
point of view of an artist, and you see yourself, and you may discuss with him, and you may even not agree with him, but
That's right.
you are on the equal level with the film, with the image. You're not, you know, in submission
Right.
with the image of people saying, well, we came to civilize you and you will never reach
Yeah, thank you.
this level. So
Yeah,
really, I felt in my flesh, I said, I have the luck to be born at a time when this cinema starts.
yeah,
I have the unique luck to have met all the pioneers of African cinema, to fraternize with them, to be like brothers, because we had the same struggle. And
yeah,
so my duty before making any feature film, because in fact, I already wrote the script of my first feature film, Alpha Win, that you quoted. It's
yes,
about my childhood in an old traditional neighborhood in Tunisia. I said, no, I must make a film to make a testimony about the passion, the love I had for my, my fellow filmmakers. And I am in a position to do that. So I have to do it because nobody else would do it. So I started from that time to film interviews from filmmakers in any place I could go when I find African filmmakers. And I was lucky enough that, again, I was not an outside observer, an outsider. I was not,
yeah,
you know, foreign observers like an ethnograph coming.
yeah,
So you African, yes? Well, what's your point of view about
yeah,
cinema?
right, exactly.
No,
Yeah,
I was truly one of them. So I
yeah,
decided to make a film which, at the same time, will keep their talk, their voice. And since I was really a brother, they took to me in a very French and direct way. Uh,
yeah,
not like they would talk to somebody who will patronize them or something like
Of
that.
course, yes,
But it took me a long time, Rico. It took me 10 years, in fact,
yes,
because I have no means. So
yeah,
every time I have some money, I buy the 16 millimeter film, and I made my interview, and then I waited for another festival. And then if I went to Cannes, there was somebody there. And after 10 years, they said, wow, in 1963, for me, the start of African cinema with a short film by Sam Ben Ousmane, Borom Saret, which is for me a short film, but a masterpiece. And now I must finish this film in 83, so it will be 20 years, and I call it 20 years of African cinema.
yeah,
But I must complete my statement by something. Since I considered myself as a filmmaker, a creator, I wanted that the film Caméra d'Afrique was at the same time not only a panorama, a very distant panorama. I want the people to understand the evolution of African cinema by seeing the clips, and I did not put the clips in by chance,
yes,
For example, I don't want to give you all the keys, but one of the key is the figure of the witch doctor. When
yes,
you the beginning of Caméra d'Afrique, you'll see that the witch doctor is a crook. He pretend that he will help the lady who brought him a chicken, but he's eating the chicken. He did
yeah,
not
exactly,
sacrifice it for God. Then he go to a tree and he pretend that he's calling gods, but unhappily for him, there is a guy who in the tree and respond to him. So
yeah,
he became completely,
yeah,
and then he became ridiculous. So nobody can believe in him anymore. So
yeah,
it's very clear at that time that the first film of African cinema was made by modernists. People will
yeah,
say tradition, superstition, no more of this. Now we want a modern approach. You know, in fact, I know that you're very fond of Frantz Fanon.
yeah,
Frantz Fanon, who is a god for me, because
yes, yeah,
he lived in Tunis, and
yes,
because he was supporting Algerian
independence,
fight for freedom, and at that time the front was living in Tunis. He even died in Tunis, in fact.
right.
But
He
wait,
died in the
maybe
US.
you will cut this after that. But just to tell you the evolution, if you see the beginning of Caméra d'Afrique, the witch doctor is seen through a modernist way, that this
Yes,
guy is a crook.
yeah,
And we African, we must stop this superstition and become rational, and be independent with the tools of rationality. But
yeah,
when you go to the end of the film, there is an evolution. If you see the film The Chapel by Chisu
yeah,
from
yeah,
Congo, the
exactly.
witch doctor come and speak to the priest and said,
That's not true.
what is this bullshit about original sin?
Right.
You may men die because of original sin. In this earth, there is a beginning and the end. So that's the animal did the original sin too. And the most important, the last clip is from Finier by Suleiman Sissé from
Mhm.
Mali, The Wind. In this
Yes.
clip, you have a similar scene of the guy speaking to the tree. But in the first clip at the beginning of the film, there was no God, nobody answered, only making jokes. But at the end of Caméra d'Afrique, you realize that the tree answers.
Yeah.
So there is an African spirituality. We must not deny it because the West said it is only superstition. We must include that and include African spirituality and not deny it. So the witch doctor, who was a crook at the beginning of the film, African filmmakers realized at the end, like Fanon, that they have to include the heritage. Very quickly, the 3 steps of the colonized intellectual by Frantz Fanon in Wretched of the Earth.
Yes.
He said that the colonized intellectual first step is the assimilation. He
Right.
want to become like the colonizer. He want to and he despise his language and his culture. He doesn't speak anymore only English or French. But then he realized that he has been crooked by colonizers, that
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
will never consider him as equal. He will always be
Exactly.
second class
Yeah.
citizen. Then the second step is the reject of the West and what Fanon called blind return to the sources, to the basics, including the negative aspect of tradition. For example, the negative aspect of tradition is against women, is misogynistic, is you know, is the system of the dowry, all and the third step is synthesis, keeping what we may use from the West experience, for example, a method of approach, a methodology, but not keep not cutting the roots with what is still alive in African culture. And Fanon is a genius because he said you must not confund folklore culture with folklore. Folklore
right.
is the frozen part of the African culture. Is when people, you know, they do a dance, they don't know anymore what the dance means,
Right,
because
right.
the older generation knew that this dance was to ask, I don't know, rain from the gods. But when you dance only for tourists in Kenya or elsewhere, so this is not culture. This is folklore. This is doing dance without knowing why you're dancing. But there are a lot of aspects which are still alive until now, and this you must include in your films. This the culture is still alive.
That's
So
right.
very modestly, I hope that the audience, by seeing the clips not only as illustration of what African filmmakers did, but even if I don't explain what I explained to you, they feel that there is a slight change of their approach from a modernist approach, rejecting the bad aspect of tradition, and at the end, a real evolution, considering that African spirituality is very important and must not be rejected, must be included in their way of expression, so in African cinema.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea for Fanon and also that's shown in the clips is that what we're really in pursuit of is the understanding and expression of humanity, because it's humanity that's been clipped that makes people resort to other means, superstition or status or caste. You know, what we're looking for is something that allows people to express that humanity, which is itself the objective of us being here. I'm going to go right to the third thing that I had asked you on this, because you mentioned uh, Sembane's film, Baron Sare, this idea of authenticity, because it also picks up on what you've been saying about how you felt when you were able to go and meet these filmmakers and also see what it was that they were up to, and let them be willing to bring you in and not treat you as an ethnologist or something like that. So in this question, what I was asking about is the question of authenticity, because I think that that's, you know, important to the themes of the film. And in that narrative, in that short narrative of Sembane's, he's kind of illustrating that. And the question precisely is, please comment on how Sembane's deep familiarity and understanding of the lived experience of Senegalese Africans is so essential to the authenticity of what we see in that clip, and how its portrayal differs from what we had been seeing in terms of this diversionary Hollywood fare. In other words, that his position as a member of that culture and his position also as an artist made it possible for him to bring to us what we saw. And that's how that film comes to be the classic that it is. I wanted you to comment on that, how that authenticity is the objective, and also how it is that Fanon himself is the person who can bring it. I mean, it's similar, I just want to say, it's similar to the way that your film, Alfaween, really talks about a real situation, you know, like when you do your film about the boy in the terraces, it's really letting us be there, and it's letting us understand that this is not fake. This is not an outside view. This is
True.
this is
True.
real. And so I'm thinking that I'm seeing that, and that's the reason for your choice in you know, putting that in your film. Please comment.
Yeah, I think authenticity in Borom Saret comes from the fact that Semben is an autodidact. So he does not belong to the bourgeoisie or to this educated class that was quoted by Fanon when he said the colonized intellectual. He was not a colonized intellectual because he was a fisherman, he was a mechanic. He went out of school very young, you know, in high school. And then he works so many things. And as you know, he works in France, in Marseille, as a docker in the port
Mm-hmm.
with heavy weights too. And from that comes his first novel as a writer, which is Black Docker. So his first novel started from an experience that he experienced himself. I mean, it's hard to be more authentic than coming from your own experience. And as you know, Samben, after writing many books, he realized that these books couldn't reach his people because his books were written in French and the people in Senegal, the majority was illiterate in French. So he said, I'm writing for my people, the people don't understand what I'm telling them. That's why after more than he was aged, after reaching his 40th year, he decided to learn cinema because cinema could speak to the illiterate and the books couldn't. And when you see, I went to Moscow and learned cinema there, and the main thing in Borom Saret, and he knows people like this guy who has a cart. He lived with them, he knows what they think, and most of them he understood that his duty was to give to this class, to these people, the opportunity to make their voice heard. And it's not for the choice of the form of Borom Saret and also Black Girl is the voice of. The voice of the main character allows us for the first time to hear what's come from within an African man. In the films by the colonials, it was just, you know, the appearance, but you never hear them, you never hear their thoughts. And in their these two films, Borom Saret and Black Girl, it's not the people talking, it is what they have in their mind. The
Mm-hmm.
voice of
Mm-hmm.
give us their thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And it was for the first time we have from within an
Yeah.
African man, an African girl, what they think and the situation where they are caught, what is their reaction. So even from their, we realize that Borom Saret is in fact a denunciation of the fact that it's a fake independence, that the independence of the French-speaking countries, as you know, contrary to Algeria, there was no fight, there was no war. France decided to give independence to this part of Africa if they have their money controlled by the central bank in France. I mean, with an economical control. And in fact, the film tells us that, you know, the local bourgeoisie took the place of the French colonialist, and the injustice stayed the same for the poor people. And if he crossed the border between the neighborhood of the poor and the go to neighborhoods of the rich bourgeoisie, well, they take his way of working, his cart, and what he said, these people who learn to read, they only learn to lie. You know, I mean, this is the new bourgeoisie. And you see that he have his medal. So it means that this guy, he was in the French army. He gave his blood for the liberation of Europe because the Senegalese soldiers were used in Europe against the Nazis. And so the policeman put his foot on the medal. So this guy gave his blood. He have no reward. And the injustice of colonialism is replaced by the local injustice. So this is very courageous because it's from the first film saying we are not free. We are supposed to be free because we are politically independent, but no, it is a new form of colonialism and the poor class is still dominated, you know. And what is very interesting in the film, that he's not at the second level when we speak about Frantz Fanon, you know, blind adoration of tradition, because we see that there is a man who is praising the ancestors of the main character to take money from him, you know. He's like the jester in the court saying that your ancestors were great. So say, you know, tradition is exploiting you as well. You're exploited by tradition, you're exploited by the new bourgeoisie, and who will help you? Your wife. The woman is the one who goes out and said, I will find a way to feed us. You know, this is an incredible film. You know, it's very short, but in this you have everything. So it's very, from this choice with the lack of means, he expressed his anger and his, you know, his the need of dignity and respect that is missing, and it's said through cinema. It's not said with the speech. It's not said. No, this is what I admire this film, and so this is authentic because he knows exactly what he's talking about. He knows that this guy, the main character, you know, when he see he entered the rich neighborhood, he said, "Oh, my ancestors protect me, my gods protect me." So even you even feel his feelings that he's referring to his cultural heritage, and all this is completely denied by the new bourgeoisie and with the guardians who are the cops. The cops are here to defend this new bourgeoisie by oppressing the people and taking their way of living. So it's really a gift for us to have the African cinema starting with this kind of film, because after that, of course, films are so different. You may after that you have some films who are only, let's say, poetical dreams, but we didn't. African cinema didn't start with this various possibilities of cinema. It started with the real vital thing, and this is you can find this in Black Girl. Black Girl is even Black Girl. I think is more addressed. I think Borom Saret is addressed to the African first, and I think Black Girl is more a reaction addressed to the white.
Well, let me ask you now about Black Girl, because to me, that I did want you to kind of hone in on that, because what I got and what really moved me is this idea, one that's very important to Fanon theory, of Black subjectivity. Because for the most part, that idea of closing off humanity to a people and othering people has everything to do with the failure to recognize subjectivity for other people. And so in this film, again, this the way that Fanon is using realism, but also the way that he's using this lack of dialogue and just doing this inner conversation to really get this thing across, it really goes to the the Fanonian issue of alienation and the idea of shutting off subjectivity as the problem. And so now we see it in full bloom and in such an emotional way. So I was wondering if that's what the film is like what, an hour plus, but the clip that you selected, I wanted you to talk specifically about whether or not it had to do with that question of forestalling Black subjectivity.
Yeah, yes, of course. I think that what is the film is showing us the deny of humanity from the white, that even in France we had chosification. You're not a human, you are a thing, you know, you're a thing. And in the film there is very clear when, you know, they have a dinner and one of the guests said, "Oh, could I kiss you? I never kissed a Black girl," you know, like, and this is so strong that you see that this deny of humanity. This girl is not a human. She's not. She's here like a robot to do things, and the voice of give us the contrary, that this person have a subjectivity, have a point of view, and have the dignity to say, then I will not take care of the children anymore because I didn't come here for money. I think the strongest thing in Black Girl is the end of the film. Very often the end gives us the key of the director point of view. At the end, the white master, after the death, the suicide of the Black girl in France, he come back to Senegal and he bring the unique thing that she kept from Senegal and put in her room. It is the African mask.
Yeah.
You know? The African mask, he give to the family after the death the mask, and then one little brother of the girl put the mask on his head, and then the white guy is frightened. He's frightened. He realizes his ignorance. He realized that all this culture he denied, he ignored all this African culture symbolized by this mask, and he's afraid of it as something which is frightening because it doesn't know what it is. It's alien. And this is splendid to see the new generation, you know, the little boy running after the white guy with the mask, and the guy said, "Oh, I'm afraid. I didn't realize that there was a culture. I didn't realize that there was humanity. I didn't realize that this girl was inherited of all this huge, you know, culture, and I just treated her as a robot, you know." And the end is really it's great. I mean, you know, it's very few things, and this is a great. I really this what is a great artist. This is a real filmmaker, you know, not
and the film still whole. They still
using the image, using the cinema to make us feel so complex and so deep things without making a demonstration like I'm doing now.
No, but the films have legs because those films still resonate in terms of the kind of, you know, Black Lives Matter, all of that. They still resonate right now. The next thing I was going to ask you, sort of the first question that I had kind of works with the fourth, or actually the fifth question. So it's this idea that when you get to meet all of these filmmakers and you want to bring to us this history of 20 years of African cinema, of sub-Saharan African cinema, because you know that most of us don't know of it. And it's really blown your mind. And so now you're ready to now share it. And then you end up noticing that so many of the filmmakers are Francophone filmmakers. And so this next question that I was asking is that one of the things that in your question, or the narrator's question in Caméra d'Afrique, you know, who are these filmmakers? How these people took so little and did so much, and that the countries themselves that they came from were unsupportive. And so they had to find other sources. And some of the sources that they found were Europeans, you know, who helped. Like the film actually points out Georges Sadoul, the French journalist and critic who promoted African filmmakers. And it also, and Sadoul had been quoted as saying, and bringing up the question, and you mentioned him earlier, bringing up the question of Jean Rouch in terms of how he was so instrumental in giving Black Africans a voice on the international screens. So the question specifically was, I wanted you to discuss the importance of the influence and support of Frenchmen like Sadoul and Rouch in opening a path for these early African filmmakers. And it was a two-part. And the next part was looking back, to what extent do you believe that Rouch's influence helped to define who these filmmakers are, answering the question of the film, who they are aesthetically and axiologically, if that makes sense.
I sincerely think that neither Sadoul or Rouch opened any path for African cinema. Okay. This is complete propaganda. This is not true, not true at all. In fact, you know, all start from something. You saw in Caméra d'Afrique that the majority of filmmakers, the pioneers, are from French-speaking countries, not from English-speaking countries. But this, in fact, you have to understand that the colonization of Africa by French, by English and Portuguese was different. Why was it different? The approach was different. You know why? Because, for example, England didn't do the revolution on 1789. You know, French did in 1789 a revolution who said all men are equals. There's no aristocracy, there is no, and you know, the device of the French Revolution still existing is liberté, égalité, fraternité, which means liberty, equality, brotherhood. So the main contradiction when France became a colonialist country, when they invaded Africa and dominated Africans, how could you say that you are praising equality and brotherhood when you are dominating people? So to justify colonization, the French colonization have to invent the fact that they are not only coming for minerals or to exploit people, they came to bring civilization. They came to help this underdeveloped people to reach culture, to reach civilization. And because of this contradiction, they started financing African, including African filmmakers, to say, no, we are supporting the local expression. We are not, you know, here to exploit their mineral resources. And because of that, even after independence, especially the independence, as I said, was given. They were not conquered by war. So in the French system, we will continue to help the expression of African artists to show that our revolution pretending that brotherhood and equality is still true because we are still financing these people, you know. But in fact, it was a chance for African cinema because cinema is very costly. You know, to be a painter, you need only some color and you know, a frame. To be a writer, you need the pen and you need the white paper. But to make a film, you need a lot of money to pay the crew, to pay the decor, to make them eat, to pay the actors. But at the same time, this costly art is also the most efficient in terms of communication with the masses. More than books, as I said, Sam Ben realized that writing books, he couldn't reach his people. But by making films, even the illiterate could understand a story in images. A visual story is accessible to any. And because when you decide that after colonization, you will use cinema to express from within all the realities of Africa, could be political reality or social realities or even poetical realities, why not? Cultural realities, you need money and you need a sponsor. And as you said, the African government didn't give a damn about helping these bohemians making films. But thanks God, we had France who was here to help. But since England did not do the 1789 revolution, they don't care about giving money to the English speaking to make films. That's why in English speaking Africa, they developed mainly documentary, you know, in Kenya and Tanzania. And you find documentaries, but very few features. And the features came very late at the time. That's why in Caméra d'Afrique, you find only one clip, which is Ola Balogun from Nigeria, Ajani Ogun. And this clip do not belong directly to the expression cinema, which is defended by the French speaking, which is using cinema for expression of identity, of dignity, of reality. It was an entertainment, as you saw. It's an adaptation from, you know, the Yoruba theater is mainly entertaining and musical. So it's part of musical. So to answer your question, Jean Rouch did not help at all African cinema. You know, to be brutal, he's an ethnographer. He's a sincere guy, you know. In fact, Jean Rouch is the second step. You know, first step is colonialism denying any humanity and any culture to these undeveloped people who need the West to learn the way of thinking and talking. But ethnography is a little step to say, wow, these people have a culture. So, you know, the colonists denied this culture. But ethnograph said, oh, they have a culture. Okay, it's a primitive one, but there is one anyway. So let's study this to see that these undeveloped people, they have a cosmogony, they have a metaphysical point of view on the making of the world, and they have also their tradition who could express something which is different from the West. And because of that, ethnography is considering these people like an inferior culture with these primitive things, but it's better than colonialism. You know, it's a little better. Ethnography is better than colonial. Colonial, they are not humans at all. They are here to bear the white man on their. But ethnographic said, look, these guys, you know, you go to the Dogon in Mali, they have their own cosmogony, they have their own. Oh, very interesting. And look at this, you know, these statues, it's art, you know, it's art which is different way. And even Picasso, as you know, was influenced by the African mask. And he quit realist painting to make painting like African mask from different, you know, different point of view on the same size.
Yeah.
But you know what? Sam Ben, which is my master, and he said Jean Rouch is filming African like insects. I mean, like ants.
Yeah.
You know, he's studying the way of ants function,
Yeah.
and yeah. So this is very different from talking from within, like we said together in Borom Saret and Black Girl. This is an external, what's so-called scientific observation of how these strange people make, you know, voodoo dance or something, and revival of the dead, oh, it's very peculiar. It's interesting, but of course they are still inferior.
Yeah.
Let's not, and we are so. I think Sadoul, he just did his job as a critic, saying, well, it's about time that there is also an African cinema. So we have a first step that Rouch is showing is that these people have a culture. But if you take attention to this position, it's not yet from them the position to have, let's say, oh no, I remember what I want to say. You know, the big luck of African cinema is that France invented cinephilia.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
France invented the fact that a film director is as important as a writer, as important as a painter, as important as a musician. He's a creator. And the French, they even did that for entertainment films. Say, you know, in Le Cahiers du Cinéma, they said, if you see Howard Hawks films, there is a personal point of view behind the westerns and the comedies, and the same for Hitchcock. Hitchcock, they said, look, these are entertainment films, thrillers, but there is an artist behind that with his own point of view. So, thanks God, the French who invited this approach of cinema, and the fact that a filmmaker must have an artistic point of view, was the model for African cinema, because it was the first people who helped them and give them money. And the second chance, so the African did not have to make entertainment films and then go to author films and expression film. They started directly with expression films. They start directly with the essential things, you know, speaking about the essentials. So I'll give you another example. The only country in Africa which created the film industry is Egypt. Egypt, they started this in the 30s, the beginning of the 30s. At that time, Hollywood did not dominate the screens of the world yet. Why? Because in the 30s, there was no TV. And you know, until the 50s, a Hollywood film could make his money back only from the American market.
Yeah.
I mean, a film with Elizabeth Taylor was, so they were not imperialist yet. Hollywood was not imperialist yet. Of course, they had their film outside of America, but they were not using that like they did after the 60s, CIA and diplomatic influence and threatenings to make sure that Hollywood continued to dominate the screens. Why? Because the foreign screens became vital for the economy of Hollywood. I mean, before TV, a Hollywood film could regain all his investment and make some benefit. And with the benefit, you make a second film, a third film, a fourth film. But the drama for Hollywood is in the 50s, TV was had a so huge success in America that half of the audience stayed at home and looked at TV. Yeah. So all this audience didn't bring money anymore to American films. So American films then, they have to invade Europe and to invade all the countries of the world, even by force, because they need the second half of the investments. And when you go back to the only African country who made films, Egypt, in the 30s, Hollywood didn't see any problem for Egyptian to make a film industry, or Mexican film industry, or Turkish film industry, or Iranian film industry. All these industries existed with no problem with Hollywood. But in the 60s, it was too late, because they needed badly the screen of the world. It was vital for them to have the half of the money back. So it was impossible then for African cinema to become an industry. If you look at the Egyptian cinema, they started in the 30s on the model of Hollywood. They made musicals in cabaret with great singers, Kulthum, Farid al-Atrash, and they made melodramas and they made thrillers. So it was very hard for an Egyptian inside this entertainment industry to express Egypt, like Samben did for, for Senegal and for Black Africa, because the industry won't let him. They said, if you want an entertainment, so that's why people like Youssef Chahine, who is the greatest filmmaker from Egypt, you know, he had to make many musicals, to make many like that. And then he made his own Cairo Station, his own personal film, was a commercial failure. And the producer said, no more of this, and they turned back to make musicals. You know, so Black African cinema was lucky enough to start from zero, to start from nothing. There was not an old cinema to fight. There's no entertainment industry who will block you. Said from the beginning, the patrons who are helping you financially was the champions of cinephilia, the champions of author cinema, of expression cinema. This is the greatest luck of African cinema, because it started with the real essential films, giving voice to an artist to express his own personal vision of his people from within, from the inner thing. And unhappily, the government didn't go like we know when we created the Pan-African Federation of Filmmakers. The idea was to create a solidarity between African nations and African regions, to decolonize screens and to take back the screens, and from these screens make films, because with no market you cannot make films, because as I explained, it's too costly. If you don't have enough screens, you cannot recover your investment. And since the African governments did not respond, we stayed in the patronizing of France. And so it's better than nothing, I must say. You know, you must, you must, when Samben Ousmane, when he made his second film, which is The Money Order, Mandabi, because of the success of, you know, Sadoul wrote about Black Girl and said, finally, we waited so long to have African cinema. So De Gaulle was the president, and the Ministry of Culture was a great French writer, Mr. André Malraux, who was also resistance against Nazis. So André Malraux, as the Minister of Culture, proposed to Samben, he gave him money to make his second film, Money Order, in color. So, but he said, when the French Minister of Culture gave the money, he said, you have to make the film in French, because you know, our audience won't understand Wolof. So, so Samben said, I take the money and make two versions.
Yeah,
One in France because I have to give
yeah,
it to France, and the other in Wolof,
yeah,
which is more authentic, as you were
yeah,
expressing. But of course, people came to Samben and said, how come you are really an anti-colonialist hero? You, in Black Girl, you showed
yeah,
the racism of the colonialist, and
yeah.
how come you take money from France to make your film? So the answer of Samen is very important. He said, I will make films even with the devil's money at one condition, that the devils don't put his tail in the,
No, that's very good. So yeah, that's
and, maybe I will finish this.
okay.
And you know, the turning point for African cinema is the year 1987.
Hmm.
I wrote a piece about that. That then you will find it in Black Camera, which is published by Indiana Press, because they asked me to translate a piece I wrote about the two paths of African cinema, Tiaroy by Sam Ben Usman or Yelen by Suleiman Sissé.
Hmm.
And I will very briefly tell you what it is a turning point. All our efforts, I was myself the guy who wrote the Niamey Manifesto of African cinema, because Saben said, come, you are like the Egyptian scribe, you know, the scribe who worked
Yeah.
in the Pharaoh's time. Because you speak many languages, you will write the synthesis of what we talk about African cinema. And all this effort was to solidarity between African nations to create a market which will be the basis of an industry, of having enough screens to recover the money. So in 1987, the film by Sembène Ousmane was called Camp de Tiaroy. Camp
Hmm.
de Tiaroy is a film about a real historical massacre was made by the French colonist army against the Senegalese troops after World War II, after they gave their blood to liberate France. They dared asking, when they back to Senegal, asking what was promised to them. I mean, their military, I don't know, pension.
Hmm. Thoughts. Yeah.
And the crazy general France said, oh, these savages are
Yeah.
making a strike to ask money from them. He sent the troops and they fired the people, you know, it was a massacre. And Samben made a film on this, but he insisted of not taking the devil's money.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
didn't take a cent from France, the contrary of the other filmmakers, it's what they only mean. So he succeeded to create a co-production between three African countries. Senegal, of course, Algeria, who gave him the director of photography, who gave him the film, and Tunisia, my country, who gave him the post-production, development and mix, sound mixing, everything. So the film was only made with African support, with no money from the North, no money from the West. And when he presented this film at Cannes Film Festival, the same reaction that the French Minister of Cooperation had with Black Girl said, "Oh, what is the subject?
Yeah.
Subject against white racism? My boy, this is not this kind of thing that we want to help you to do. Maybe do us some poetical lyric
Yeah.
things, but
Yeah.
not this." So the film was rejected by Cannes Film Festival, but it was taken by the Italian Venice Film Festival. We didn't have a colonial past in Senegal.
Yeah.
But look how the same year, the other way of African cinema was represented by Yelen, by Suleiman Sissé,
Yeah.
which is the film who completely was according to the standards of art film festivals in the world. You know, the model of African cinema we want you to do. I mean, no political, very poetical,
Yeah.
related to your tradition, related to, thanks God, Suleiman Sissé is a great artist. So the film is really beautiful, and there is also a link to African spirituality. But when you see this film is 100% financed by France, I mean, France give money to a film who could enter in the cinephilia standards, you know, following me.
Hmm.
If it
Hmm.
enter in the cinephilia standards, I mean, be awarded in Cannes Film Festival, it's okay. But if the film is too offensive against the past of French colonialism, no, thanks. We are not taking it. So from this year, 87, we really hoped, we fought, since 1970, uh, to have this kind of co-production South-South. And this is the year we lost the battle. This is the year where it was clear. Then the last attempt was Saint-Ben, and it's not a chance because Saint-Ben is our master, and was rejected. And from then started financing films, arty films. I mean, some are made by great artists, thanks God. It's the same thing, for example, when you had in America, Coppola and Scorsese helping Kurosawa in Japan, saying he's a great artist, he belongs to the history of the seventh art, and now we have no means to make, so we'll finance, give him money to make Run, for example. So it is the same cinephilia attitude, that we help artists to express themselves. But the hidden thing is, if he doesn't insult us. In fact, historically, this was possible in the 70s and the 80s. You know why? Because then there was a sense of guiltiness among the French intellectuals that they colonized Africa, that they exploited these people. So people insulting France were welcome at that time. In the 70s and 80s, said, oh, these people that we oppressed, now they talk, and we said how much they oppressed. But after that, they said, okay, enough. Now, enough of denouncing us and making us guilty. The other generation didn't feel any more guilty about the third world, said no. And since cinephilia, I must praise it. Why? Why, Rico? Cinephilia is a very democratic religion. Cinephilia is a religion. I mean, a real film buff sincerely thinks that from the smallest village of Burkina Faso could be born the equal of Kurosawa. I mean, he really, and he's waiting for that. He's even searching. This is a unique chance because of the cinephilia. A guy like Suleiman Sissé, or a guy like Mahamat Saleh Haroun, they are welcome immediately to enter in the cinephilia field at the condition that their film is arty enough. I mean, they have an artistic level. So it's a non-written message that don't do politics. If you criticize your own system, your own country, but please do it aesthetically. Then you'll have a chance to enter in the court and to enter. And from that time, if you see the film in Cannes Film Festival, they are all aesthetic films. It doesn't. I'm not criticizing, Rico. Let's be precise. I admire a film like Hélène. Really, he's a great director.
Beautiful.
If you see Suleiman films he made before, you see, for example, Bara. Bara is really struggle of class. The corrupted head of the factory, the young engineer wanted to defend the workers, and he's killed. And the workers revolt against the boss. This is, from his Marxist approach coming back from Moscow. Coming back from Moscow, he still had this training to denounce the NGs. If you see the film he made after that, which is Finier, the Wind. The revolt of students against military oppression, military dictatorship. So it's still in the present of Africa, with the real problem of his own country, and it's his duty to make a film about that. And he was clever enough. I know very well Suleiman because I made the subtitles of Finier, the French subtitles, and he said, if I showed the film in Mali before, it had been censored, banned. But since the film was shown in Cannes and was praised there, they didn't dare cut the film. And even, he said, political guys said, thanks God you showed it before in France.
Yeah.
So now we have a reason not to cut the film. So he brought prestige to the country.
Yeah.
So, like Sam Ben said, you have to navigate in the cactus path between all the contradiction, the local political contradiction, and the paternalistic position of the West to make film even with the devil's money. But now, if you see the present of African cinema, because we failed to make this solidarity, this economical solidarity, which the last film was Count de Tiaroy. After that, there's few countries with continue to make co-production. For Burkina Faso is the first one because they co-produced Sarah Ounia by Medhondo. They co-produced the Molade by Samben Ousmane. Tunisia co-produced also after Samben Camp de Tiaro, they co-produced the film of Flora Gomez from Guinea-Bissau, which is called The Tree of Blood. I will remember the title. And Morocco co-produced also because they offered post-production to a lot of African sub-Saharan films. But all these were very few, remembrance of, of what we aim to do. And since the African governments did not do this common market that we are dreaming of, we stayed in the not south-south, but north-south axis. And the North said, okay, we let you do some offensive critic film against the West in the beginning. It was normal, but now enough. I will give you the right key of this. In the film Finier, you have the main film is the revolt of the students against the military dictatorship. But there was the scene I quoted before, the old grandfather, because his grandson is arrested, is in prison, he go to the tree and he talks to the god. He said, help me to free my grandson. And this is a great film because you know the god, the answer, but they said, don't count on us. We exist. Count on yourself.
That's right.
Count on yourself, count on your wisdom and your strength. So this is very important. You know, it's like the third step of Fanon, synthesis. You know, African spirituality exists, but it does not allow you to count on only on gods. You have also to be a man and to fight as a man with the other men. But you know what happened in Cannes? The critics, what they said to Souleymane Cissé, they said, well, a film about the revolt of students against the military dictatorship, we had a lot from Latin America, my son. We had a lot. We had the Brazilian films, we had Argentinian films. This is old-fashioned. But the scene where the old men talk to the gods, this is typically African. This is what you must develop.
They love that.
What is original for us as a cinephile. So it's not said directly, but in conscience of the filmmaker, he said, well, I have no market at home. I have no screens. The screens are dominated by foreign Western films. The only markets I have are festivals, thanks to cinephilia. So these people are telling me indirectly, let's forget politics and give us some dream, give us some trip so we escape in your wonderful African magic, you know? And without, it's not conscient. When you see the films in Cannes, they are more and more, you know, erratic, aesthetic, you know? They are beautiful because the guys are talented. But, and another point, maybe I'm too long. When you take Abderrahman Sissako, Sissako is one of the greatest film directors of Africa now. When made the film which is called Here Makono. Here Makono is the film about himself trying to leave Africa and staying in Mauritania. Here Makono, Waiting for Happiness, it's in English.
Oh, yes, of course, yeah.
This film was put in a section with a non-competitive section in Cannes, Un certain regard. But official selection in a big room, lot of critics. The year after, he became himself president of the jury of this section. But after that, because the film was very aesthetic and
very beautiful
and deep at the same time, it's wonderful. It's a great artist. After that, he made a film called Bamako, the court, where we have in an African court people denouncing the International Monetary Fund and his politic towards Africa, denouncing World Bank and its politic about Africa. But this film was not put in competition, was not put in certain regard. I was in Cannes. It was put in a very small theater, which is at the last the last floor of the festival, and we had to enter in this. Why? Because it did not correspond to the new standards. If you are African and you want to be adopted by cinephilia, you must enter in the aesthetic standards and not bother us with your criticism of world economical system or world political domination by International Film Fund or World Bank. So after that, maybe he understood the lesson, because when you see his last film, Timbuktu, is a great film because you have everything in it. You have at the same time a very aesthetical form, but also a view about what oppresses the West for the moment, you know, jihadism, terrorism, and so on. And he made a film with all you know, a global film. And this film, of course, he was awarded in France as best French film of the year, not African film, best French film of the year, best French sound, best French editing, best French. And this film, again, was entirely financed by France. But I don't want to be a guy who spoil. I said, even with the devil's money, African cinema exists, even with the contradiction of trying to be in the accepted, how do you say, place they gave to you. So that's why I think if we succeed in, you know, I'm old now, in putting this this struggle again, said, let's count on our own forces. Let's not depend of the North at this degree, you know. Let's not depend of, if the North co-produce, I make the film, it doesn't, I can't. So
no. Well, the thing about
your contradictory, but my position is a position of let's talk with some wisdom. This is better than nothing.
Yes, of course, of course.
The African cinema survive thanks to the finance from the North, and thanks to cinephilia, they don't interfere that much, you know, because like Coppola helping Kurosawa, they are waiting from the African to give them a piece of art. But thanks, cinephilia is democratic philosophy. If it was only profit or business, there will not be any African cinema.
You know, all of those points are carefully put into Caméra d'Afrique. I mean, we're not going to go into all of them, but I just want to point out a couple of them. I mean, the conversation between Idelin and Alassane, I mean, it really, to me, points out that contradiction and hypocrisy that you're talking about now. And then you also talk about CIDC, which, you know, at that time had not come and gone, but now it has. And so it really talks about the obstacles of how we put our money together and how we continue to do this. And I think that the last conversation for us to have has to do with the question that you ask in the film, which is about what is the future of African cinema? That we got this start, we had this luck, and we had the auteur, you know, toting French who wanted to help us, and they did help us, but they also gave us that idea of the artist as the engineer of the art. Yeah, and all of that is really wonderful.
Yeah.
But then the strings, became more and more apparent as we went along. All that's in Camera d'Afrique, which is wonderful in various different ways. Sometimes in clips from conferences or conversations like the one with Idaline, it's all there. And so apart from just having the clips, there's also those conversations and awarenesses of those things, but the questions that are being asked. And so in terms of this future, it's interesting what you're saying, this whole idea that, stray away from criticism. And I think that one of the artists, and I'm not sure for better or for worse, but one of the ones that you excerpt a couple of times, you start off with him actually, is Medhandu. And so this whole idea of, certainly this idea of auteur is there, but also there's this idea of this critique that he's talking about, kind of a strident message, as well as the auteur style, which is his own. And so I'm wondering if you see that as...
They're saying that...
Wait a minute. I'm getting feedback. But anyway, I'm wondering if you see his film... Are you hearing me?
Not as good as it was.
Okay, well, let me just
the
ask
transmission. Yes.
The question is actually the one...
But please, put the question again, if possible.
Okay, yeah, the question is, to what extent do you think Soleo, in its strident message and experimental style, portends a global, I call it emancipatory tendency in cinema? A tendency that links him to other auteurs like Eisenstein, Solanas, Rocha. That's the question.
Yes, well, if you see the search for a new form like Soleil Haut, and also mainly in Tuki Buki by Djibril Diop Mambeti, which is a masterpiece, you must link it with the historical period where these films were made, because they were made in the 60s and late 60s, exactly at the time world new waves emerged. New waves were rejecting the mainstream cinema and claiming the right to talk differently with film, And another luck of African cinema, as I said, is to be born in the 60s. I mean, at that time where Rocha in Brazil created Cinema Novo, then you had also Miloš Forman was, they called that in Czechoslovakia, Prague Spring Cinema. And of course, in France, Jean-Luc Godard, who created a new form for cinema. And so the luck of African cinema is to, to refer to Frantz Fanon again. Frantz Fanon, he said, after the colonization period, the third world have the duty to create a new man, a new man who, this is also in African cinema, to create a new form, a new way of expression, not only complaining about colonialism and what happened, to be complaining as a victim. No, proposing something new, something which will be an addition to humanity, an addition to what Seventh Art gave to humanity. And when you see Munamoto is also a way of telling the things differently and adding a new poetry and a new point of view to the cinema of humanity. And this is very important, that it started at a time when everything seemed possible, and there was even an audience for that. I mean, if you show now La Hora de los Hornos, you won't find a public ready to hear an anti-imperialist speech for so long. The audience moved. The audience wants something else. But at that time, you can be free enough to improvise in Tuki Buki from your soul, to improvise a lyrical way of expressing this guy who wants to go out of Africa, like with all his rebel without a cause, and at the end not being able to leave Africa, no? After all this teenage and young revolution. This is one of my favorite films, of course.
Yes.
And because of that, African cinema experienced very early, very different paths, you know. You have, if you see in Niger, for example, Mustafa Alassane and Jingare Maiga, who worked also in Jean Rouge film, we see it's local melodramas, you know, it's very, I mean, there is no research of a new form. So thanks God, because of the new waves you quoted, Rocha and all these people, they had access to this film and said, we can revolutionize the speech as these guys did. I mean, Rocha is not better than Djibril Diop Mambeti,
Right, right.
or Dikonge Pipa, or no. And I think this is very precious. Because of that, we can refer to pioneers as free creators who were free to invent a new form of cinema starting from Africa, and not only the period of weeping about colonization and weeping about denouncing all, you know, the victimization. No, we had all together. We had and it depends of the personality. If you take Djibril Diop Mambé, take the Senegal. Inside the same country, you have very different ways of doing films, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Bouquet is very different from Samben's approach, no, and very different from, let's say, Moussa Touré now, or the guy who make Felicity. You know, the young guy who.
Which one?
You know, the younger one from Senegal who made Tay. Tay is today is. And he made Felicity. Yeah. He shot that in Congo. Alain Gomis.
Okay.
Alain Gomis.
Okay. Yeah.
If you see Alain Gomis, you realize that there is still this vein of researching a new language still alive.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
You see, Tay is an incredible film. The guy who knows who is going to die and who crossed all the city of Dakar. You saw that or not?
No, I did not. Yeah.
Tay. So I must just make you feel confident that it's not dead.
Not dead. Okay, that's the answer I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So I mean, all of this just kind of emphasizes the importance of Caméra d'Afrique, and we noted that it was shown first in Cannes, I think in 1983, and so now with this new HD, you know, print, that you're part of Cannes Classics 2019. And I wondered how you think that matters. Is that important? If so, why? And, you know, are you, you know, how do you feel about that?
Well, you know, Caméra d'Afrique unhappily was filmed before the end of the dream of CIDC. CIDC was, you know, the goal we were dreaming about, that 14 African countries make a common market and allow, for the first time in history, some African films to go in 14 African countries, like it was the case for Finier, The Wind. It was shown in all these 14 countries. The same for Wend Kuni by Gaston Caboret, all these films. And happily I didn't film the end for local political reasons, in fact. You know, because in these 14 countries, there were countries with, let's call, a progressist government, you know, like Burkina Faso at that time, with Thomas Sankara, anti-imperialist. And the same 14 countries, you had Houphouët Boigny, who was, before independence, French deputy in the French parliament. So he's pro-French. And all this mixed of contradictory regime led to the burst of CIDC, because the progressist one said this could become a neo-colonial network. So it was an extreme position, a radical position. I think it was a mistake to cancel this wonderful network because of political reasons, you know. So we realized the mistake was maybe we should have made a cooperative between national societies of cinema and not between political governments. Because political governments, they fight, and then they blew up the whole thing. If it was only technical, you know, only economical, it would have survived. So this is the missing part in Caméra d'Afrique, which is, you know, the end of CIDC as the end of the economical struggle. And also, if it was possible, I would add the two paths, Camp de Tiaroy and Yellen, as the two paths of African cinema, as I did in the paper in the Indiana Press Black Camera. But unhappily, I'm pessimistic. I don't think that this film could change things, only if we show it to African head of states. I mean, if you find a way, we have find a way to, for example, there is the Francophone Summit, which is in Tunisia this year, in fact, at the end of 2001, where a lot of head of states will come from Africa. If by chance we succeed to show them Caméra d'Afrique, maybe these people said, wow, why did we lose this, this opportunity? Look what was the dream and what happened now. We only have films who, you know, and why this could make a miracle. Because if you take a country like Chad, for example, you know, Chad, all the film from Chad were financed by France, including the films of Mohamed Saleh Haroun. He made Darat.
I do know.
Dry Season was shown in Venice, and the man who shouts, un homme qui crie. I don't know what the title in English. And the film was shown in Cannes, official competition, and he won award, like Suleiman Sissé in 1987. And then I imagine the scene, the Chadian head of state calling the director, please tell me your secret. The press never speak about Chad, never. And because of one film, we had 4,000 articles on Chad, thanks to cinema. So my son, tell me, how could we develop this thing you call cinema, this, you know, seventh art? So Mohamed Saleh Haroun, he answered to the head of state, he said, you know, a country like Morocco, they did very well because they did like France, in fact. They did not finance film from their own treasure. They make a part of the, you know, the advertisement in television about, I don't know, coffee, sugar, part of the income of television advertisement go to the National Center of Cinema. So the more you see buy this brand of coffee, the more you have money, for cinema. So the head of state said, well, but in Chad, the television is very poor. I said, well, there is another way. You know, smartphones are very popular in all Africa, and they have a huge income. So if you make a tax on that, we'll have money to make films. So they had said, okay, all right, son, we'll do that. And then Chad, which is one of the poorest countries in Africa, made a law that I think 5% of the mobile telephone income will go to cinema.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was great. But with this money, Mohamed Saleh Haroun made another film called Gris Gris, and this film was shown in Cannes Film Festival in competition again, because, you know, they have this author politic. They encourage if a guy had already a film competition, they show the other film competition. And, you know, Rico, I was so proud in Cannes to be in this huge theater, and the film starts with The Republic of Chad Presents.
All right.
Because money came from
Yeah.
not from the French, but it came from the from
the-
Africa.
yeah. No.
But I don't know what happened. I don't want. It was after that it stopped, and the money was only used for this, the same director film, but the other directors I think didn't have access to make other films after that. It stopped. So we always have little hope.
Yeah. Keep
Some
hope alive.
government will realize that African cinema is also a prestige weapon for them.
Yeah.
Because of that, they decide to help, and then unhappily it doesn't continue. So I think if I succeed to show Caméra d'Afrique to all the head of states after the African summit, we will after that make please make a common market again. This is
Yeah.
important for your prestige.
Yeah. I hope that happens. So Farid, this has
Yeah.
been an amazing conversation, and we are just so happy that we could, at the African Film Festival, facilitate it, and also just as a part of our virtual festival, get Caméra d'Afrique back to our audiences in New York and virtually in the world.
Yeah,
Thank you so
I
much.
hope it will find a distributor in the States, because my feature film are distributed in the States thanks to Kino Lorber.
Yeah.
They distribute Alpha Wind, Boy of the Terraces, they distribute Summer in La Goulette, and the last one, Zizou. But maybe if they know that Caméra d'Afrique was shown in the prestigious African Film Festival, maybe they could, or another distributor, take it for, the universities, African Studies Department, and could be
Yeah.
very useful, I think. Could be
Yeah.
very useful because, as you heard, I'm a pragmatic person. I'm not, I'm not,
Yeah.
I hope that even a small path in favor of African cinema given by this film, towards students or professor, is an important path. It's an important step.
Yeah, my films are shown, which are mostly for education markets, are Third World Newsreel and Cinema Guild. Those are the distributors.
I really
Kino
hope,
is mostly for
that
narrative films.
Rico, yes,
I was just saying that Kino is mostly narrative films,
oh yeah,
but the Caméra d'Afrique does have an audience. So I'm confident, as you said, we're hopeful. I'm confident that it will find a distributor here if that's what we're looking for. That's good. And I also hope that you're successful in showing Caméra d'Afrique to these heads of state, and that we
for free.
for free, and that we also can revive the CIDC. So this is all good. Thank you so much, Férid Boughedir. We are honored. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm really very happy that New York African Film Festival is showing the film, thanks to the effort of Mahen Bonetti. You quoted that I tried to make African Film and Audiovisual Fund, and Mahen Bonetti, the head of New York African Film Festival, was in it. She was part of the board. So, so she helped a lot, and happily didn't succeed, as usual. But we tried. So really, I'm very proud that the film is shown in New York. Rico, my hope that if people who see Caméra d'Afrique realize the vital artistic and human importance of African cinema, that they will, because of this film, try to know more.
It's unmistakable, unmistakable. Férid Boughedir, thank you so much. Thank you.